Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 460 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, not only ask you to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. For people that have listened to this podcast religiously, or for people that know me, know my take on baseball, know how I feel about baseball in general. I'm not the biggest fan of baseball. I'm not going to poo-poo it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's just boring to me a lot of times. And this is no disrespect to anyone that loves baseball. Just to me, it's just a boring game sometimes. A lot of times, I'm just like, I can't get jiggy with it. But I will give credit where credit is due. While no, I'm not the biggest fan of baseball, I am a fan of sports. And one thing that I will say is, I think out of every American sport, whether we talk about basketball, whether we talk about football, I think baseball probably does the best job at promoting, at raising the stakes in the postseason. Now, no. I'm not here saying that the World Series is bigger than the Super Bowl. I'm not here saying that I enjoy, the World Series more than I enjoy the NBA Finals. But what I am saying is, to give credit where credit is due, baseball does a fantastic job at promoting the postseason, at bringing stakes and raising stakes for the postseason. And none of that was, all of that was displayed in Game 3 of the Mets versus Brewers wild card game to get to the NLDS. The best thing about sports is storylines. Storylines drive sports. If there was no storylines to attach to, nobody would really care about the sport, honestly. Yes, people would be fans of players, but if there weren't storylines, if storylines weren't attached to series, weren't attached to players, weren't attached to teams, weren't attached to seasons, nobody would, I'm not going to say nobody, but a lot of people wouldn't really tune in as much. But when you have the Mets, a team that has a rabid fan base, and a fan base, to be completely honest with you, do you know how hard it is to be a fan base, and that fan base kind of feels like the little brother or the little sibling to a team that is quite literally next door? I look at it like this, and I'll kind of bring it to myself. Do you know how frustrating it is sometimes being a Washington Commanders fan when an hour up the road you have the Baltimore Ravens and you see Lamar Jackson, you see they have 2 Super Bowls that I've seen. It's tough being the proverbial little sibling to a team. And that's what the Mets have been for a while. I'm not saying that the Mets don't have success, but when you're literally an hour or 30 minute on a subway train next to the New York Yankees, and then you see a lot of times how your season ends. Remember, the Mets just a couple years ago had like the best record by far and lost in the wild card, if I'm not mistaken. It was deemed as one of the biggest collapses in modern sports history. That's what that's the history, or the recent history, I'll say, that the Mets have been rolling with. So when you see a team, remember, this has been such a roller coaster ride for the Mets this entire season. Remember, coming into the season and the early parts of the season, they were the worst team by far. I think they were 0-something, and they were literally one of the worst teams. And then they had a meteoric rise. when you have Lindor playing well, when you have Pete Alonso playing well, the pitching finally wakes up. It was quite literally a roller coaster season for the Mets. So then when you get to the wild card and you're going against the Brewers and you win game 1, you lose game 2, and coming into game 3 and in game 3, you're down all game. In fact, I believe at the top of the 8th, it was 0-2. The Mets had a 8% chance. I think the lowest it got to was 6% chance to win that game. And you start to feel it. I was around Mets fans watching it. You start to feel here we go. Oh, you know, this is what we're used to. This is what the Mets do. And then Pete Alonso comes to bat. You have 2 on the plate, 1 at home, 1 in first base, 1 at third. And Pete Alonso hit that. You know what's so fantastic. You know what I think the best feeling has to be for a baseball player, especially a baseball player in a big moment that is a heavy hitter. It must be fantastic. I don't know that feeling, obviously, so I'm just guessing. But it must feel glorious when you go up to the plate, you hit the ball, and you instantly know that it's a home run. And that's exactly what Pete Alonso hit that joint and started celebrating instantly. He knew. I would say, to bring it to terms that I would understand, it was probably when you're playing a game, you're hooping, and it's, I don't know, you're going to 15 and it's 13-12 or 13-14. The other team has 14, and you hit a 3, and as soon as it leaves your hands, you know it's good. I can imagine that's probably the feeling that baseball players have when they hit a bomb and they know it in a big moment. I want you to understand that it has been tough sledding for the Mets. It has been tough sledding for years now for the Mets. Because I'm hearing it. Yo, it's just the wild card. You just beat the Brewers. Let the Mets fans have this. And I'm not saying this in a condescending way. I'm not saying this in a way to downgrade or lessen a Mets fan's emotions. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that the Mets are going to, because they have to go on and play the red hot Phillies, and the Phillies, their pitching has been incredible, along with the heavy hitters that they have, like a Bryce Harper, like a Trey Turner. So I'm not saying that the Mets are just going to go into Philly and then win. I think, me personally, I think the Mets playoff train is over in Philly. But I'm also the same person that thought that they were going to lose to the Brewers. So clearly, my opinion don't matter at all in this situation. I'm just saying congratulations, man. Congratulations to the Mets for beating the Brewers in epic fashion. I believe Pete Alonso became the first player ever to hit a home run, like a home run to take the lead in the 8th, or when you're already down 2 runs. Again, they were down 0-2 when he went up to the plate. I believe he's the first player, especially first Mets player, to ever do that. This is when you see how the Mets season started, and like I said, the literal roller coaster ride that was the Mets season all year, I think it goes back to storylines. It goes back to the script writers. You couldn't have asked for a better script. Actually, You can ask for a better script, and that script would be for the Mets to go on and win the World Series. But it's about baby steps. And right now, congratulations to Pete Alonso. Congratulations to the Mets for beating the Brewers. Mind you, the Brewers is a really good team. And let's not forget that it took the Mets the literal last day of the regular season to get into the playoffs. So the fact that they were able to overcome the Brewers and now they will face the Phillies in the NLDS, can't get no better than that, man. So shouts out to the Mets for beating the Brewers and advancing to the NLDS. Speaking of advancing, and let's move on to what we saw Thursday night football. We've talked about this all season. So this isn't a new thought. This is just a thought that has been or continue to grow and, in my opinion, continue to be proven right. The question was, why would the Falcons seemingly go all in on Kirk Cousins? Out of all the quarterbacks you could have got. Now, no, I'm not. I'm aware that the quarterback selection process wasn't the strongest. But one thing that I do know is, out of the quarterbacks that you could got, I know Kirk Cousins was available. Obviously, Russell Wilson was available. Turns out Justin Fields was available. Why were the Falcons so heavy on Kirk Cousins? And why, when they essentially did get Kirk Cousins, why did they feel like they hit the jackpot? Mind you, this is the same Kirk Cousins that's never been to a Super Bowl. Same Kirk Cousins that I think has maybe one playoff win under his belt, maybe two. The same Kirk Cousins that doesn't have the highest ceilings that you would hope that he has, especially with the money that he's accumulated over his career. Why were they so happy for Kirk Cousins? Thursday night football proved it. The Falcons beating the Bucs 36-30 in overtime proved it. And I've said this before, but again, I just feel I need, for the people that haven't listened, for the people that haven't watched, let me briefly explain. When we've looked at the Falcons for the past few years now, the Falcons that had Desmond Ridder as their quarterback, the Falcons that had Taylor Heineke as their quarterback, the issue that the Falcons continuously ran into is we have a plethora of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The issue is they did not have a person that can unlock everyone else's talent. You see, the quarterback has a bunch of jobs, has a bunch of responsibilities. And one of them is extracting the best out of younger or their offensive players. Don't get me wrong. Not every quarterback is great. Let's just keep it a bean. Not every quarterback is great. But you would still hope that the quarterback that you enlisted to be your starter, you would hope that they are able to extract the best out of your offensive players. One perfect example, since we're talking about Atlanta, I think Julio Jones would have been great anywhere. I think Julio Jones is a future Hall of Famer. I think Julio Jones, you can argue, is one of the greatest just sheer talents we've seen at the wide receiver position. One of the reasons why I think outside of the MVP, outside of making it to a Super Bowl, one of the reasons why I think you can say that Matt Ryan had a successful tenure as the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons is because he was able to get the best out of his wide receivers. He was able to get the best out of Julio Jones. He was able to get the best out of Roddy White. Matt Ryan used to throw the ball everywhere. And while no, it did not essentially equal a Super Bowl win, I think a lot of the success that you see Julio Jones having, a lot of praise and accolades that you see Julio Jones has accomplished, a lot of that is because Matt Ryan, a pass-first quarterback, was his quarterback. When you look at this current iteration of the Atlanta Falcons, they've had talent for years, or at least they've projected to have talent. They've had players that you thought should be better than the production that they were exhibiting. For instance, Kyle Pitts, who was a high first-round pick. You had Drake London. You had Bijan Robinson. All of these players you would consider a top tier. The Atlanta Falcons clearly thought that they were important because they were drafted high. But there was a reason why Kyle, especially now, obviously the complaints that you hear is from fantasy owners, but there's a big reason why when we talk about some of the most disappointing players at the end of almost every year, Kyle Pitts' name was on that list. Drake London's name was on that list. Not because they're not talented, but because they did not have a quarterback in Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke that can get the best out of him. So when you get, to bring it full circle, when you get a Kirk Cousins, look, I don't think, even with Raheem Morris, the new coach, I don't think Atlanta believes that they are a Super Bowl caliber team right now. I think they believe they're a good team. They should win the division. But when we pit Atlanta against some of the best teams and some of the best rosters, I don't know if Atlanta themselves even think that they should be up there with, let's say, the Detroit Lions. Let's say the 49ers, even though the 49ers, when fully healthy. Especially when you see their defense still has some major problems. But you know one thing, the one problem that we have not seen this year, outside of maybe one or two games, you can't say that we haven't seen, I'll say it like this. Kirk Cousins has extracted the best out of Drake London. Outside of one or two games, he's extracted the best out of Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney. Remember, Darnell Mooney was going crazy on Thursday night. If it wasn't, he dropped a pass that if he didn't drop it, I don't think we would have seen the magic that we saw in overtime, because the game probably would have ended in regulation. But Kirk Cousins, one thing that he has proven over his career is that he is an adult and he is a person that, while the ceiling may be lower than you would hope for a veteran of his caliber, he has gotten the best out of people like Stephon Diggs. He's gotten the best out of people like was it Pierre Carson? Like, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. Oh, Justin Jefferson. Maybe it wasn't Stephon Diggs, but it was definitely Justin Jefferson. And then you look Thursday night. You're going against a Bucs team. While, yes, depleted, their secondary was depleted with injury. However, Kirk Cousins sets an Atlanta Falcons record. Again, remember, I told you, Matt Ryan, who used to throw the ball all over the place, was a quarterback. Michael Vick was a quarterback for this team. And Kirk Cousins became the first Falcons player. And he set the record for most passing yards by a Falcons quarterback with 509. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I believe she asked me why you don't see a lot of when you look at the college game compared to the NFL game. And I think she asked, why is it that you see, we were talking about Alabama and Georgia, and Jalen Milroe almost collectively, when you talk about passing and rushing, totaled 500 yards. Carson Beck almost had 500 yards. And I was explaining to her that the NFL is much better than college. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's very rare. Even some of the worst defenses in football, it's extremely hard to throw for 400, 500 yards in the NFL because these are professionals. And Kirk Cousins just did it. Kirk Cousins became the first, has the most passing yards from an Atlanta Falcons quarterback. And if you still think that Drake London went out with an injury twice, I believe, in that game and still had 12 receptions for 154 yards. Kyle Pitts, who didn't have a catch a game before, had 8 catches this game. I think it was, obviously, there were opportunities that could have been had for both teams. I think if Darnell Mooney would have caught the pass, it would have been a first down, and then you wouldn't have had to have a long kick that was essentially blocked. Baker Mayfield, he only threw for like 187 yards or something like that. But this was a game that could, obviously, it going into overtime, this was a game that could have been won. It could have been had both sides. I'm not going to crown the Atlanta Falcons the team to beat in the NFC South right now, seeing as though, and I think shouts out to Stephen A. Smith and shout out to L. Duncan. They kind of said it on First Take. Almost every single passing yard that was accumulated by Kirk Cousins, all 509 of those was in the pocket. Meaning the Buccaneers really, obviously, I think a lot of it was due to, the injuries and the people that were out. But a lot of it, they did not have a pass rush to save their life on Thursday. So I don't know, and I doubt that when Atlanta plays a healthier or a better team defensively, Kirk Cousins is going to be able to sit in the pocket long enough to not only throw 58 passes, but to have 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. But I will say that it's not that you win, it's how you win. And having, getting the game-winning touchdown for Condrell Hodgins, that was thrown by Kirk Cousins, or, having Darnell Mooney, who was an afterthought when he was with the Bears. He had an incredible game. Drake London, who they could not get a quarterback to get the best out of Drake London. You got that. This is why. And I'm also not going to just throw away the Bucs. I think the Bucs, if they get healthy, Baker Mayfield, this showed me to score 30 points, and you had a fumble by Bucky Irving, who's a rookie. Baker Mayfield didn't have the best of games as far as he wasn't prolifically throwing the ball all over the place. I'm not going to make grand assumptions or grand conclusions about either team. I think Time will tell where both teams sit, and I still think the NFC South is wide open because, again, you have two teams that's 3-2, and I think the Saints they just need to figure out the balance between their defense and offense and get healthy. I think that it is a 3-team race because I'm not even going to disrespect those teams by discussing the Panthers. But I think Kirk Cousins, in a game like this shows, and this is the last thing I'll say on the game. Kirk Cousins has shown at least, and don't get me wrong, it's been an up and down season to start the season for Atlanta. But I think that Kirk Cousins has shown that he is the perfect quarterback for the Falcons. Not saying he is the quarterback to get them over the hump. Not saying that he's the quarterback to get them to a Super Bowl. But there's no question that Drake London, is at least early in the season, has had his best season as a Atlanta Falcon. There's no question that we've seen an emergence outside of last game. We've seen an emergence of Kyle Pitts. Darnell Mooney, at least up to this point, is having the best season he's had in his career. A lot of that is because they have an adult at quarterback, and they have somebody that they know will bring the best out of their players. So shouts out again to the Atlanta Falcons for beating the Buccaneers 36-30 in overtime. Oh, very last thing I'm going to say. Look here, NFL. I understand if you're going to make a rule, make the rule permanent for the entire season. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, the NFL did change the overtime rule. But they changed the overtime rule just for the playoffs. Right now, the overtime rule is, in the regular season, a team, you're the first team. If you win the coin toss and you receive the ball and you score a touchdown, the game is over, which is what we saw on Thursday Night Football. The game is over. The other team does not have a chance. Bada bing, bada boom. If you score a field goal, the team does have a chance to. But if you score a touchdown, then it's over with. That changes, I believe, in the playoffs, where even if the first team scores a touchdown, the other team has a chance to score. That rule was obviously changed over the last few years when you saw what happened to the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs, and when you saw what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs just a game later with the Cincinnati Bengals, which essentially put the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl against the Rams. They changed it, but why? If you're going to change it, why only change it for the playoffs? I get it. I guess you don't want the games to last as long and the stakes aren't as high in the playoffs, but a game like Thursday night, you would want Baker Mayfield, who, again, he didn't have the numbers, obviously, that was comparable to Kirk Cousins, but he had a good game. I would want to see Baker Mayfield get a shot at possibly tying it up, especially after seeing the meme that they had of that man after Hodges scored the touchdown. So shouts out to the Falcons for beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 36-30. And yes, I always say this, Thursday Night Football is the start of a new week for the NFL season, and I'm going to give my predictions for Week 5. But before I do that, I have to talk about this Davonte Adams situation. There is a lot of things that, and there's a lot of directions I can go with this, and I'll start with one and see where it takes us. Davante Adams, who was the wide receiver, the best wide receiver, in all intents and purposes, the best offensive player, and could possibly be the best player for the Las Vegas Raiders, has essentially requested a trade out of Vegas. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. There's been he's had issues with the team as far as their ability to win games or lack thereof ability to win games consistently and to compete for, a Super Bowl. And it hasn't seemed like it's been seamless in Vegas. I mean, you hear a game ago, you hear the head coach Antonio Pierce talk about, people made business decisions, and we as an organization are going to make business decisions. And then I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm not saying that things are false, but it is odd that then out of nowhere, Davonte Adams develops a hamstring injury that holds him out the game last week and is going to hold him out the game this week. And then you see Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Raiders, like a tweet or like an Instagram post essentially saying that they're going to trade or trying to trade, or Davante Adams has played his last game as a Raider, which then he has an interview with NFL. Davante Adams has an interview with NFL Network, and he's pretty much says, I can only control what I can control, which then prompted him to request a trade. And the teams that you're hearing. Now, obviously, there's teams that have a bunch of cap space. I think he would cost like $13 million for this year. There are a few teams that have cap space. The one that comes to mind right now is the Washington Commanders. I think the Steelers have it. But the team that you are hearing the most is the New York Jets. Obviously, Davante Adams, would be paired with the quarterback that he has seen the most success with, and that is Aaron Rodgers. Let me say this about the Raiders, first of all. I don't want to go as far as to say they're a poverty franchise. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go as far as saying that. They did obviously see success back in the day. But when you look at some of the best organizations in football, you don't hear about stuff like this. Now, I know that there's somebody that's already vigorously tapping on their keyboard. What about the Chiefs and everything they went through this offseason? Yes, that is very true. The Chiefs are one of those teams that continuously have something going on. Whether we talk, I'm not going to go the history, but the Chiefs is one of those teams that has something going on almost every offseason, every year. Yeah, but the Chiefs also have arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. And the Chiefs are trying to three-peat. So that's a little different. But you don't really hear a lot of buttoned-up organizations going through stuff like this. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of a coach. And I'm not saying that Antonio Pierce has been a bad coach. What I'm saying is I've never heard of a coach, a head coach at that, liking a tweet or liking an Instagram post pretty much saying that Davante Adams is essentially gone. I've never seen a coach be in that situation. I'm not saying that I think it kind of goes to a second point in once the Raiders shipped or let Derek Carr walk, you kind of knew that the writing was on the wall for the relationship of Davante Adams and the Raiders. Davante Adams, the only reason why he went to the Raiders is because him and Derek Carr are best friends. They played at Fresno State together, and they have developed a friendship, great friendship. And that was, Davante Adams even said it. That's the main reason why he went. Obviously, it's closer to his family as well, but the main reason was he wanted to play with his friend in Derek Carr. Now, I think the Green Bay situation with this organization and Aaron Rodgers kind of made it easier for Davante Adams to go, but he said he chose the Raiders because Derek Carr was the quarterback at the time, and he wanted to play with Derek Carr. So after a year of that, they shipped Derek Carr out of there, and that's why Derek Carr is now on the Saints. So once Derek Carr left, you kind of knew that it was just a matter of time before Davante Adams would probably want out of of Vegas. Winning cures all. Let me say that. You see that a lot in the NFL. It's like you can play for the worst. You can play in a place like Kansas City, like Buffalo, that has the absolute worst winters of all time. Yeah. Minnesota winters are so brutal that they had to build a stadium with a roof. Side note, P.S. I don't understand, bro. Like, if you are in a place, I guess I understand tradition and the environment or whatever. But if you're in a place like Buffalo, like Kansas City, like New York, like Cincinnati, where there are brutal winters, and the NFL is a winter sport, why do you have stadiums that don't have roofs? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not crapping on them at all, but why in God's name did Atlanta and Dallas prioritize a roof and not Kansas City and Buffalo? Like, I know those are newer arenas, or newer stadiums, but what are we doing? If you have inclement weather, bro, the Kansas City Chiefs played a game that was like negative 20 degrees against the Dolphins. There are people that had some people had to get their limbs or like arm or fingers and stuff amputated, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that was your fault as a fan for going in conditions like that. You could have just watched at home with the air conditioning, or with the heat, but still. If you play, and I will, this is one of those topics that I will stand on my soapbox and just, if you play in a place that has harsh conditions in the winter, and you're a winter sport, get a roof. I'm sure. Again, I understand it's so cool to play in the cold. No, bro, it's not. No. Damn. But back to what I was saying. Winning solves a lot. I'm sure that it's beautiful playing, like I just said, in Atlanta that has a roof. Or the Colts, they have a roof. The Vegas has a roof. And I'm sure those teams would probably be a lot easier. And maybe Davante Adams would feel differently if the Raiders were winning. Winning cures all. You've heard this saying before. Winning cures all. And the fact that the Raiders not only shipped off the main reason, 95% reason why you went to that team, they shipped him off quickly, or let him go quickly. You bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. That was horrible. You bring in Aiden O'Connell. He wasn't that good. And you have Gardner Minshew, who, shocker, everyone that was saying, Gardner Minshew, I don't think he is a starting quarterback, has shown that he's not a starting quarterback. It's no shocker to me that Raiders patience that Davante Adams had is gone. And then on top of that, you have your head coach liking posts. Again, this is the new age, bro. And whether it was an accident or not, that's a bad look on an organization. You know what it is? Say it like this. I'll say it like this. Imagine you are beefing with your girl, right? Or beefing with your significant other. And you accidentally like a post saying, my girl or my significant other is always tripping. I can't wait to get a new one. It could be an accident, but imagine how that dinner would go that night. Like, well, the saying is, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It happened. So now I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm not saying, I think Davante Adams does have a hamstring injury, but I think the hamstring injury might not be as severe if him and the Raiders were on good terms. So I essentially think that Davante Adams has played his last game as a Raider. Then let's get to the second point. Or the third point at this point. You got to ask yourself, what type of player is Davante Adams right now? I think that's what teams have to ask themselves. One of the toughest things that you can do is, and I think this is why a lot of players don't like being in bad situations, especially if you're a top tier player, is because now there are question marks about Davante Adams. And is he still a number one option? Is he still, remember, there was a long period of time where there was no question who was the number one wide receiver in football. That was Davante Adams. And those questions about Davante Adams and his impact on a team really only started to arise once he went to Vegas. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, he spent a couple years in Vegas. It hasn't really worked out. Is Davante Adams still a number one receiver? And I think, yes, he is. But I will say it like this, and there's kind of an asterisk. The wide receiver position is not a quarterback position, which is why you usually see a lot of times when people win when we talk about contracts or accolades, talking about MVPs and stuff, one of the biggest reasons why usually a quarterback wins the MVP is because that is looked at as the most important position on a football team. And how do I say this? The impact of a quarterback, especially a top tier quarterback, is drastically different than a wide receiver. Not saying that a wide receiver isn't as important or isn't important, but Josh Allen going to a team is much different than Stephon Diggs going to a team. And that's no shot to Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs is still a top tier wide receiver, and we're seeing that on the Houston Texans. But the Houston Texans would look much different if Josh Allen went over there compared to Stephon Diggs. So when you talk about Davante Adams, I think his impact changes when we talk about the teams. The few teams that we've heard is obviously the Jets, is the Steelers, is the Ravens, and the Commanders. Let's just stick on those 4 teams. Oh, and the Cowboys. Let's stick on those 5 teams. if we're talking about is Davante Adams that missing piece that could put your team over the top, I think there's only one of those teams that need Davante Adams to go over the top. And it's not who you think. Oh my gosh, Jalen, did you just do a tease in the middle of a show? Did I just do a tease in the middle of a show, in the middle of a segment at that? Oh boy. Look, man, if they say I'm not good, I don't know what it is. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm joking, but I think that team is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, no. As a Washington fan, I'm not saying I want him to go to the Dallas Cowboys, but when you look at the Cowboys and you look, their lone offensive weapon outside of Dak Prescott is CeeDee Lamb. And they know that, which is why they throw the ball as much as they throw the ball. They don't got nobody else to throw to. Brandon Cooks, he's getting older. He's struggling with getting separation, and he's hurt. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, he hasn't really emerged. Imagine a team with Davante Adams, who still has the number one receiver capabilities, and CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that's their biggest issue. I think their biggest issue, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is they can't run the ball. And just, I don't know why anyone's shocked that Ezekiel Elliott is not the same Ezekiel Elliott that he used to be. And Dalvin Cook, again, I don't remember seeing Dalvin Cook on the field yet. And on top of that, their defense can't stop a nosebleed, and DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons is out. So they have some issues, but I think that to maximize Dak Prescott, having Davante Adams would be grand. I'm very interested to see what he would look like on the Commanders, obviously, as a Commanders fan. The Commanders don't have a legitimate number 2 option. And you would think that if Davante Adams went to the Commanders, then that would slide Terry McLaurin to the number 2 position, seeing as though I still think at this moment Davante Adams is better than Terry McLaurin. I'm one of those people, if you have Washington's and Jaden Daniels is having a fantastic start to the career, fantastic start to the season, and he is doing it with not that much outside help outside of obviously Terry McLaurin, and you have Zach Ertz. I think if you put Davante Adams, that gives you a wide receiver room that has Adams and McLaurin. That'd be crazy. I don't know. And I've heard people talk about this, and I kind of understand. I don't know if any quarterback or any wide receiver any wide receiver of note, any number 1 wide receiver would want to go to Baltimore because of the system that they run, and because they run such a run heavy, because you have someone like Lamar Jackson and now you have someone like Derrick Henry. They run such a run heavy offense that you're not going to have the eye popping numbers. But I will say this: if you put Davante Adams on that roster with an Isaiah Likely, with a Mark Andrews, with a Zay Flowers, with a Rashad Bateman, that would be. And then obviously you have Derrick Henry. You also have Nelson Aguilar, Justice Hill. That would be an offense for you. I'll say this. If Davante Adams went to the Ravens, which it would be a long shot because of salary cap and everything. If he went to the Ravens, I think that they would have. But I think right now you can argue that they have one of the best offenses in football. they would by far have the best offense. Because you have arguably the best route runner. You have, at least to this point of the season, the best rusher because Christian McCaffrey is hurt. Like, boy. I think it'd be great for the Steelers. You put him with George Pickens, and Justin Fields has had a pretty good season to start. They only have one loss. And then the offense outside of George Pickens and Najee Harris doesn't really, and Pat Freiermuth, they don't really have a legitimate number two, which obviously George Pickens would slide to the number two, and then you have Davonte Adams. And remember, the Steelers were heavily trying to get Brandon Ayuk. So they obviously are in the need and in the want for a number one receiver. Like, that would be incredible. And there's a reason why I left the Jets last. Now, I didn't rank. That wasn't me ranking the most important to least important. That was just me just rattling off the teams. But I ranked the Jets for a couple reasons. Or not ranked. I saved the Jets for last for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is because I think out of all the teams I just named, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Ravens, the Steelers, out of all the teams I just named, I think the clear-cut number one team that he probably will be going to is the Jets. Everything makes sense. There's a reason why when we were talking before the season, and even last year, we were saying if Davante Adams wants out of Vegas, 9 times out of 10, the team that he's probably going to go to is the Jets. I'm not going to say Davante Adams isn't going to fit for the Jets. When you have Garrett Wilson, who hasn't had a great season at all. He hasn't really done much of anything. In fact, Allen Lazard has had a better season than him right now, which is eye-popping, seeing as though we know how good Garrett Wilson can be. The Jets, I don't know, man. I think that the Jets have issues at their offensive line. Aaron Rodgers is not the same Aaron Rodgers that played for Green Bay. Not saying that he's not good. I'm just saying he's not the Aaron Rodgers that we obviously remember. He's older, obviously. I think he's going to end up, Davante Adams is going to end up with the Jets. And that's going to bring more pressure to a team that already has a mountain full of pressure. You even see it now. People are already turning on Robert Saleh. 9 times out of 10, if they do not win a Super Bowl this year, which 5 weeks in at this point, they don't look like a Super Bowl caliber team. I don't see Robert Saleh being there. To be honest with you, if you go into their bye week, whenever it is, I haven't really looked. If you go into their bye week and they have a losing record, I don't know if Robert Saleh finishes the year. I think Davante Adams would be a big get for the Jets. And hopefully it would open up the game for someone like Garrett Wilson and someone like Breece Hall, who the running game hasn't done much of anything. But I will conclude this part by saying Davante Adams, in my opinion, has played his last game in Vegas. And I think it's so interesting how we got here and how it's interesting how we got here, but everyone that's been watching this situation since Derek Carr got left knew that this was happening. This was, in my opinion, the biggest foregone. This was more of a foregone conclusion than the Kansas City Chiefs making it to the AFC Championship when they've been the last 5-6 years. This was more of a foregone conclusion than that. So we'll see what happens, but I think, just like I think a lot of people think, that Davante Adams is a Jet. It's just going to take some time. But we'll see. Oh, and like I said, we're in week 5, and I'm going to move on. I'm going to give my predictions for week 5. And we're going to start with We're going to start across the pond. In London, you have the Jets going against the Vikings. I think this is a extremely huge game for both the Jets and the Vikings. Right now, we're looking at two teams completely different. We're looking at we still have, in fact, we're looking at two teams completely different but the same in a sense. What I mean is, we're still trying to figure out how legit the Minnesota Vikings are. I don't think there's any question that they deserve to be 4-0. I don't think that there's any question that Sam Darnold has been incredible. Aaron Jones has been incredible. Justin Jefferson has been incredible. This defense that is led by Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator, they've been outstanding. I don't think those questions are here. I think the questions are, okay, the Minnesota Vikings are 4-0. Are they a Super Bowl contender? Because when you're 4-0, when you're one of two teams that have not lost a game, you have to all right, can they win a Super Bowl? Are they that good? And you're about to go up against a quarterback that in his Green Bay days kind of owned you guys. And you're going up against a Jets team, like I just stated, that has a bunch of pressure. I think the Minnesota Vikings, especially when you talk about defensively, has been, and obviously record, so this isn't me saying something grand, but I think the Minnesota Vikings have been much better than the Jets. And while I think Aaron Rodgers has the opportunity to outplay Sam Darnold, I think that the Minnesota Vikings are just better than the Jets, and I think they're going to win. I think the Jets, Minnesota, their defense is incredible. Brian Flores has unlocked something in this defense that's been great. So I think Minnesota is going to go into London and beat the Jets. So, and then we'll just have a week's worth of content about what's next for the Jets. You have the Panthers going against the Bears, or at the Bears. Quiet as is kept, Caleb Williams has been getting better game after game after game, and the Panthers still aren't good, even though they do look better with Andy Dalton than they did with Bryce Young. Chuba Hubbard has looked okay. Deontay Johnson has looked okay, but I think the Bears are just better, and the Bears are playing at home. The defense, the Bears defense is the best unit between both teams right now. So I'm going to go with the Bears beating the Panthers. I just don't think the Panthers are that good. And I know that they've looked better with Andy Dalton, so I'm not going to take that away from them, but no. You have Baltimore going into Cincinnati. Now, this is a divisional rivalry. You have Lamar Jackson going against Joe Burrow. And Ryan Clark says something that was, obviously he didn't say it seriously, and it was a joke at the time, but I think it's very prevalent. One thing, and I talk about this a lot, we talk about pressure, and we talk about which team has more, what team is more determined to get a win. And looking at this game, you would say, okay, the pressure and the team that would want to win this more is the Bengals. You don't want to go 1-4, and you don't want to lose to a divisional rival, especially a divisional rival that just a year ago was in the AFC Championship and looked like, at least for these last two games, looked like they've turned their season around. And Ryan Clark said, yeah, well, pressure doesn't have to block. Pressure doesn't have to stop a team. And even though it was like a throwaway comment, that was profound to me, because I would have said, the Bengals need this win. I think the Bengals are going to win. But I look at how the Bengals have played this year compared to how the Ravens have played, and I think the Ravens are just a better team than the Bengals. You can say Joe Burrow can outplay Lamar Jackson. Okay, cool. But the defense still has to stop Derrick Henry. They still have to stop Isaiah Likely. They still have to stop Zay Flowers. I don't see that happening. They have struggled. They damn near should have lost against the Panthers. That's what I said on Wednesday, If they would have played a better team, they probably would have lost. I think the Ravens are going to win. I think the Ravens are just a better team, and they're playing better right now, especially when we talk about defensively. Now, I do understand that the Ravens, and no offense to them, the wide receiver core in Buffalo is not Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But I think the Ravens defense is getting much better, and I got the Ravens winning. You have Dolphins at Patriots. This is probably the first game I am going to pick the Patriots. The Dolphins look god-awful without Tua Tagovailoa, and obviously he's not able to play because he's on IR. They suck. The Dolphins have all that talent, and it just shows you how important a quarterback is. Now, I know the Patriots don't have a quarterback as well. Justin Brissett isn't the best, but Ramondre Stevenson is pretty good, and the defense is okay. So I'm going to go with the Patriots, and the Patriots at home. I just can't get out of my head what I just saw from the Dolphins. I got the Patriots winning. Commanders at Browns. A lot of people will say that this is a trap game, and I'm not going to go as far as saying that. But what I will say is I'm not going to disrespect the Browns defense. The Browns defense, they still have one of the best defenses in football. And the Commanders still don't have a good defense, especially when we talk about the defense, like the secondary. Our defensive front is pretty cool with, Dwight Payne and Jonathan Allen and Bobby Wagner. That's okay. But when we talk about the secondary, still a lot of questions. And I know that the Browns offense has been broken most of this season. And I do know that they are high in drops and overthrows. Deshaun Watson be throwing that jump. Deshaun Watson might throw the ball to Eddie Leonard's if he launching that jump. But I think Jaden Daniels is one of the best, at least has shown the first few weeks that he's one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the NFC East, but in the NFC. I'm going to go with the Commanders. I think the game is going to be a lot closer. And honestly, I will not be surprised if the Commanders lose, because you are going against a top-tier defense. But I'm going to go with the Commanders winning. I think the Commanders are on a hot streak right now. And I think that Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback at this moment than Deshaun Watson. So I'm going to go with the Commanders. Jaguars at Colts. The Jaguars need a win more than anybody can imagine right now. And you're going up against a Colts team. I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to play or not. If he does play, I don't know. But then again, if Joe Flacco plays, man, oh boy. Do I have the Colts winning this game? I have the Colts winning this game. Damn, the Jaguars about to be 0-5. Uh, yeah, I got the Colts winning. Even though the Jaguars are at home, the Jaguars haven't looked like, well, outside of the Bills game, all their games have been pretty close. But on the other hand, they have lost all those games. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Colts. I think the Colts, even though the Colts are beat to hell, I think the Colts are gonna beat the Jaguars. They've been better. Bills at Texans. Um, to me, it is interesting to see how the Bills bounce back from their loss to the Ravens. And on top of that, Shakur is not going to play, who has emerged as their number one receiver, even though that Keon Coleman and Josh Allen's relationship or chemistry on the field has gotten better. The Texans, they desperately need Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon, I think, has come out he's not going to play. Even though, C.J. Stroud's connection with Nico Collins has been good, and Stephon Diggs is getting better. The Texans are so dependent on, they need a run game. And if Joe Mixon doesn't play, which it looks like he's not, and, Von Miller is suspended 4 games. Let's not forget that. I'm going to go with the Bills. I just think that the Texans look much different without Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon is not going to play. So, while the Texans are still good, I just think without a running game, it's a lot of pressure on. And the Bills are a good defense. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of pressure on C.J. Stroud. So I'm going to go with the Bills. Raiders at Broncos. I don't even know, bro. Both teams aren't that good. I'm gonna go with the Broncos. Broncos have a better defense. Gardner Minshew is right now better than Bo Nix, but Bo Nix did just win a game with 68 passing yards or something like that. But I'm not high on either one of these teams, but I do think the Broncos defense is the best unit out there. So I'm going to go with the Broncos winning. Cardinals at 49ers. I have the 49ers. Cardinals, I think, have come back down to earth. They have a high their defense is better than we thought they would be, but they're not that good. And offensively, they have James Conner and Marvin Harrison Jr. Trey McBride looks like he's going to play, but they don't really have any other wide receivers. I can't name you another wide receiver. And yeah, the 49ers defense has kind of been a question mark this year outside of last week where they just emerged. So I just think the Cardinals aren't as good. I'm going to go with the 49ers. Packers at Rams. The Rams, like I said before, they are decimated with injury, and Jordan Love looked really good the second half last game, coming back from an ACL injury. I think the Packers are going to win. Matthew Stafford is good. It's just he can't have the mistakes that he has. When you have a fully loaded team, the mistakes that he has, you can overcome. And obviously the Rams are far from fully loaded. So I think the Packers are just better, and Jordan Love right now has more options to choose from. I have the Packers beating the Rams. You have Giants at Seahawks. The Giants are one of the worst teams in football, and the Seahawks, even though they did lose to the Lions last week, they are one of those. They can put up some points with Kenneth Walker III, with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant. They can put up some points, and I don't see that for when the Giants' leading rusher right now, Devin Singletary, has 56 catches for 221 yards in 4 games. To put that into perspective, right? Let's go to another. Let's go to Jonathan Taylor, who is looked at to this is supposed to be a resurging team, right? Or this is supposed to be a resurging year. He has 349 yards. Brian Robinson has 307 yards. Derrick Henry, I'm not going to do that because he's like the best wide receiver or running back in the league. What I'm saying is that's not a lot of rushing yards, especially when you see they've carried the ball 56 times. And Malik Neighbors is not going to play. Yeah, no, Seahawks are winning. Steelers at Cowboys. Now, this Sunday Night Football, this is going to be a huge game. I think that this is going to tell you where both teams sit. You have a team, the Steelers, that just lost, but defense is incredible. You're really going to see how good their offense is, and you're going against a Dallas team that their two best defenders or two best pass rushers are not going to be there. Michael Parsons ain't playing. DeMarcus Lawrence isn't playing. I think that bodes well for the Steelers. To me, this game should be a Steelers win. The Cowboys are trying to pick themselves off. They're trying to figure things out. The Cowboys aren't really that good, both sides of the ball. Dak Prescott's okay, but again, when your only option is CeeDee Lamb, I got the Steelers winning. I think the Steelers overall is a better team right now, and they've looked like the better team. I'm just interested to see everything that is in favor for the Steelers offense to be good. And I said this on Wednesday's episode. Even though they lost, I think that Justin Fields had his best game as a Steeler. Hopefully he's able to grow on that and add to that. And I think that they're going to go into, or I think the Cowboys are going to go into Pittsburgh, another team where I think should play in a dome, by the way, because have you ever been to Pittsburgh in the winter? Oh my gosh. I think Pittsburgh's going to win. I have Pittsburgh winning. Then you have Monday Night Football. You have the Saints and Chiefs. At some point, the inefficiencies of the Chiefs this year is going to cost them. Patrick Mahomes has 5 interceptions to 6 touchdowns. You don't have Rashid Rice. Outside of last game, your connection with Travis Kelce hasn't been there. While your defense has been really good, your offense has not been. And you're going up against a defense that is, I think Tyrann Mathieu is coming back, and I think Demario Davis is coming back. That's going to be tough. But then again, the Saints are going up against the Chiefs defense, and going up against Chris Jones is, Jesus. I'm gonna go on Kansas City is at home. I'm gonna go on a limb and say the Chiefs get their first loss against the Saints. I think the Saints defense is quiet as it's kept, man. The Chiefs offense has not been great all year. Now, they found ways to win, and I'm not taking that away from them. They have been great in that sense. They haven't lost. And like we say, you give Patrick Mahomes more time or time at the end, 9 times out of 10 you're going to lose. But I think the Saints offense has been better than the Chiefs offense. And yeah, the Chiefs defense is still ferocious. And you're playing. I'm going to say the Saints. I'm going to go with the Saints. I'm going with the Saints. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't feel confident in that pick. But, seeing as though the Saints did just, are they like on a 2-game losing streak? I don't know. I'm going to go with the Saints. That's my week's 5 predictions. Let me know what you think. And lastly, before we go, we have the unpopular topic of the day. Now, how do I address this? Let me first say congratulations to Caitlin Clark for winning the WNBA Rookie of the Year. I think when you talk about the records that she broke, when you talk about just her impact to the game, whether we talk about fans, whether we talk about revenue, whether we talk about viewership, it was well deserved that she won the Rookie of the Year. I think the biggest issue that people are having, and you're hearing it, is she didn't win unanimously. We know that Asia Wilson won the MVP unanimously, but Caitlin Clark did not win Rookie of the Year unanimously, which obviously a lot of people thought. There was one person, we don't know who it was, but she voted for Angel Reese. And that is kind of where I want to end this show talking about. I think it's in the WNBA's best interest to not share the identity of this person, because this has been probably one of the most polarizing seasons for a fan base that we've ever seen. Whether you talk about racist rhetoric that a lot of people that disguise themselves as Caitlin Clark fans have spewed to other players, to coaches, to the hate mail, to the death threats that people are getting behind Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise in the WNBA. You know what's crazy? I think Caitlin Clark deserved to win Rookie of the Year. I think that, again, when you talk about the records that she broke and getting her team to the playoffs along with Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, I'm not shocked that somebody voted Angel Reese for Rookie of the Year. Remember, Angel Reese in and of herself, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, in my opinion, are what we would consider super rookies. They are rookies that play far beyond the title of a rookie. I think if you looked at Caitlin Clark's game and you'd be like, yeah, that's probably a long-time vet. If you look at Angel Reese's game, that's probably a long-time vet. Remember, before she got hurt, Angel Reese set the record for most rebounds, not just for a rookie, but most rebounds for an WNBA season. In fact, I think even with her getting hurt, I think she set the record for most rebounds per game from a player in WNBA history. While fans of Caitlin Clark and social media would make you think that the gap between, you know what it is? Hear me out, okay? Hear me out when I say this. The Caitlin Clark Angel Reese debate, in a lot of similarities, is kind of like the Kobe Bryant Tim Duncan debate. And this is what I mean. No. I am not saying that Caitlin Clark is on the same level as Kobe Bryant. Nor am I saying that Angel Reese is on the same level as Tim Duncan. I'm not saying that at all. This is what I'm saying. As a fan base, you have to understand what people love, what people idolize, what people gravitate to. They gravitate to offense. They gravitate to, dunks and threes and crossovers and just the spectacle of offense. That a lot of times the fundamentals, the things that don't get talked about, the things that don't get glamorized, just get thrown away. When you have a conversation with somebody that maybe isn't as privy in sports, or maybe isn't as privy in the history of basketball, and you threw the name Kobe Bryant out there compared to the name Tim Duncan, they'd probably think that Kobe Bryant is leaps and bounds better than Tim Duncan because he scored more points than Tim Duncan. While I, or somebody that is a little more invested in the NBA and watched it more, would probably argue, well, I'm not saying that if you think Kobe Bryant is better than Tim Duncan, that you're wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying if you think that Tim Duncan is better than Kobe Bryant, you're wrong. What I'm saying is, if you ask the people that maybe are quote unquote casuals, they'll speak glowing of Kobe way before they'll speak glowing of Tim Duncan. But when you look at it, they have this damn near the same amount of accolades outside of points. Caitlin Clark has a flashy game. Her game is beautiful, man. I think she set the record for most assists. Like the records that she set, I saw it on SportsCenter the other night. The records that she set is like a Star Wars themed scroll. It just keeps going. Angel Reese kind of has the same thing, especially when we talk about her impact and her importance to the rebounds and to just her team. I was heavy on the fence saying that Angel Reese, for a good portion of the season, was my rookie of the year. Seeing how important she was to the team. At the time, the Sky were in playoff contention, and she broke the rebounding record. But when you also, and I was also on the side of, I wouldn't mind, especially if both teams made to the playoffs, I wouldn't mind seeing a co-rookie of the year. We've seen that before in the NBA. But as we sit here today, I'm not mad, and I think that, when you see how the season ended and you see just her importance, I'm not mad that Caitlin Clark won, the rookie of the year. And I think that it was well-deserved. I think when you look at the end, she deserved it more than Angel Reese. But I don't want people to sit here and think that the gap of importance to each other's team is vast. Yes, it would be cool if Angel Reese won. If Caitlin Clark won unanimously. Cool. But she didn't. And I think both of them had an incredible season. And this isn't me poo-pooing on Caitlin Clark. This is me saying congratulations for winning Rookie of the Year. And I just don't want people to think that as groundbreaking and as record-breaking as Caitlin Clark's season was, let's not forget how good Angel Reese was. And vice versa. I probably, looking at the end of the season, and I know people are probably going to ask, looking at the end of the season, I probably would be shocked. I would have been shocked if Angel Reese won. And I probably would have said the same thing. If she won, congratulations to her, but let's not forget what Caitlin Clark did. Caitlin Clark deserved to win the Rookie of the Year. I'm not mad that it wasn't unanimous. You still won it. And I just, for the people, because I'm hearing a bunch, release the names of the person that voted Angel Reese. Points wise, yes, it was night and day different. But when we talk about impact to the team, especially when you see how the Chicago Sky looked without Angel Reese, the impact that both players had, let's not get it twisted, bro. They're both uber important to their team. But congratulations to Caitlin Clark for winning Rookie of the Year. And that's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the links in the description below. At multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate everyone that subscribed, everyone that likes, dislikes. I appreciate all of you guys. If you like the content, if you make it this far and you haven't followed, I don't know what to tell you, bro. But if you do like the content, I appreciate you, and tell a friend to subscribe. It means a lot. Also, from my DSP listeners, that means Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your DSPs and wherever you're listening to the Unpopular Podcast, please follow. It means a lot to me. No platform is bigger than the other, so I appreciate everyone that listens to me. It means a lot. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily there. That's where you get longer reels. That's where you get, you can get a back and forth with me, stories. I have a lot of people telling me how, wrong I was about Teresa Witherspoon firing, or a lot of people telling me either I hit the nail on the coffin or hit the nail right on the head with Derrick Rose, or how wrong I am. Cool. If you follow the socials, I don't mind going back and forth. Just keep it respectful and we can do it. So please follow the socials, Instagram or TikTok. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully I recorded this Friday evening-ish before the Oregon game. Hopefully Oregon wins. And until next time, much love.